You are listening to the You Gotta Laugh podcast.
Sure.
With your boy Edgar Robledo.
Turn it up. Turn it up. Turn it up.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone. Today, we are exploring this highly specific, incredibly fascinating source document from a collection called Echoes of a Glitched Reality.
Yeah, it's a wild one today.
It really is. Specifically, we've got our hands on what is known as a Nano Banana Pro prompt.
Right, and if you aren't familiar with that terminology, it's essentially a meticulously crafted text blueprint.
Exactly. It's designed to instruct an AI image generator to create this very specific visual scene. And the title of this scene, the Mandela Effect Support Group.
Which is just such a great concept right out of the gate.
Oh, I know. Our mission today is to decode exactly how this single document constructs a literal masterclass in existential dread. It mixes nostalgia, glitch art, and human psychology.
Yeah, it really does.
But to set the stage, I want you to imagine you're sitting in the dark, right? You're staring at a screen, and slowly, faintly, this glowing text begins to appear in the shadows.
Ooh, setting the mood.
And it asks you a single, deeply unsettling question. It says, what if your memories were never wrong?
Yeah, and that is a profound disruption of how we normally navigate the world.
Absolutely.
Because we are so conditioned to accept that human memory is fallible. We misplace our keys, we forget names, we misremember childhood events all the time.
Yeah, I do that daily.
Right. It's a comforting defense mechanism, honestly. When the world doesn't match our recollection, we just assume our brains made a filing error.
Oh, for sure.
But that simple question you just read, it completely flips the script. It suggests that you are not the one making mistakes. It implies that your memory is perfect, and it is reality itself that is broken.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that is exactly the mind-bending territory we are getting into today.
Yeah, it goes deep.
The level of detail in this prompt is just staggering. It isn't just asking an AI for, a spooky picture. It is literally acting as a director.
Right, it's highly technical.
It's setting a stage, directing the actors, lighting the scene, and programming this atmosphere that feels surprisingly relatable to anyone who has ever sworn they remembered something differently than everyone else.
Yeah, and what we are looking at is essentially the DNA of an image, written out in algorithmic instructions.
Like blueprint.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to understand how a prompt like this manufactures unease, we really have to look at the mechanics of generative AI.
Okay.
Because these models, they don't think in pictures. They think in mathematical relationships between words. So when a prompt engineer writes a highly detailed description, they are steering the AI through a vast multidimensional map of concepts.
Right.
Every single word carries weight. And the very first thing this prompt does is establish a highly specific physical architecture.
Yes, the setting.
Right. It demands a dark, cinematic, underground church basement.
Which is so specific. It's not a sterile sci-fi laboratory.
Right.
It's not some dark void in outer space. It's a church basement.
Exactly. The setting establishes the emotional baseline. What's fascinating here is how it uses that mundane environment. If we think about what a church basement represents in the cultural lexicon, it's a space of community, of safety, vulnerability. It's where local support groups meet, where AA meetings happen, grief counseling.
The folding chairs, the bad coffee.
Yes. It's an environment specifically designed for typical mundane healing. So by placing a reality-breaking event in this specific space, the prompt leverages our deeply ingrained association with safety and completely subverts it.
But it doesn't just put them in a church basement. It actively corrupts that space right from the start.
Right.
Because it calls for flickering fluorescent lights, specifically dim green fluorescent lighting, and dust particles floating in the air.
Yeah, that green light is key.
Just so gritty and uncomfortable.
From a psychological and visual standpoint, that lighting choice is doing a massive amount of heavy lifting. Green fluorescent light is notoriously unflattering.
Oh, the worst.
In color theory, a dim, sickly green evokes a sense of institutions, of hospitals, spaces that are sterile but neglected.
Right, like an old asylum or something.
Right, exactly. And furthermore, when you introduce the concept of flickering, you are instructing the AI to render a space that feels fundamentally unstable. A flickering light implies a feeling power source. Combined with the cinematic shadows the text asks for, it creates an atmosphere where the surreal feels really grounded.
It's brilliant, honestly, because of that contrast. If you want to make something terrifying, you don't put it in a haunted house where people expect it to be scary.
Right, that's too obvious.
You put it somewhere totally boring. It's like walking into a completely normal, mundane community support meeting.
Yeah.
You've got the plastic folding chairs, the bad lighting, maybe a stale plate of cookies on a table.
Right.
But everyone is absolutely terrified because the coffee maker in the corner is just casually violating the laws of physics.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right. The mundane container makes the broken reality hit so much harder.
The physical container is aggressively mundane, which makes the anomaly stand out. But, the environment is really just the container.
Yeah.
The real psychological weight, the actual existential dread, it only kicks in when you look at the physical evidence these people are clutching in their hands.
Oh, the props, the evidence. I love this part. The prompt is highly specific about these items scattered around the room.
Very specific.
It lists a Berenstain Bears book. It lists a drawing of the Monopoly Man, specifically with a monocle. It lists an old VHS tape that is, quote, labeled differently than remembered.
And these aren't just random nostalgic objects. They are the quintessential real-world anchors of the Mandela effect.
The classics.
Right. And for anyone unfamiliar, the Mandela effect is a cultural phenomenon where large groups of people share an identical false memory.
Like the spelling of a certain bear family.
Exactly. For years, massive portions of the population have debated whether the popular children's book series was spelled Berenstain with an A or Berenstein with an E.
I swear it was an E.
See? Millions of people vividly remember the Monopoly mascot having a monocle too, even though officially he never has.
Which still blows my mind. And the room in this scene is just filled with this stuff. The prompt mentions scattered cassette tapes, old newspapers with changing headlines, warped family photographs.
It's everywhere.
It's like a hoarder's nest of broken reality.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the underlying mechanism of why this works so well goes back to human psychology.
Okay.
Our brains are incredibly efficient pattern-matching machines. We rely on shared cultural touchstones to navigate society. By using real-world examples of the Mandela effect as the central props, the prompt forces you, the viewer, to question your own memory right alongside the characters in the image.
That's a great point.
It breaches the fourth wall. You aren't just looking at a group of crazy people. You were looking at a Berenstain Bears book and suddenly thinking, wait, how do I remember being spelled?
It pulls you into the support group with them.
Yes.
But okay, here's where it gets really interesting because I do want to push back on one specific detail the prompt includes.
Okay, what's that?
So while I love the subtlety of the VHS tapes in the children's books, the text also explicitly calls for a bulletin board covered in red string connecting altered logos and historical events.
Ah, the red string board.
Right. Isn't that the ultimate visual cliche? The paranoid detective or the crazy conspiracy theorist in their basement connecting dots with red yarn?
It is a huge trope, yeah.
By including that trope, does the prompt want us to view these people as genuinely paranoid and unhinged? Because that seems to undermine the idea that their reality is actually broken.
That is a crucial tension to examine. You're completely right. The red string board is a well-worn trope of paranoia and delusion in media.
Very much so.
But within the context of this specific prompt, we have to look at how an AI interprets that instruction alongside the directive for a subtle existential horror atmosphere.
Okay.
I would argue that in this scene, the red string serves to validate their terror rather than dismiss it as delusion.
Wait, really? How so?
Well, in a normal world, the red string means you are losing your mind and seeing connections that don't exist.
Right.
Right. But in this room, under those green fluorescent lights, the red string is a perfectly rational response to a world that is actively rewriting its own history.
Oh, wow.
It is a desperate, futile attempt to map a collapsing system. These people are trying to apply basic logic, connecting point A to point B in a universe where point B keeps changing its name, its logo, and its history.
That is wild.
So the string isn't a sign of madness. It's a sign of a profound need for order in an objectively disordered universe.
Oh, man. That is so much darker.
Yeah, it really is.
It's not paranoia if the universe is actually physically out to gaslight you.
Exactly.
And that perfectly sets up the next major element of this prompt. Because so far, we've only looked at the static evidence, the books, the boards, the tapes. But the horror in this scene isn't just a historical argument about the past.
No, it's happening now.
Right. The prompt dictates that the horror is active. It is dynamic.
Yes, the focus naturally shifts to the human element. This raises an important question about the psychological tension of the scene. The prompt describes the circle of strangers having mixed reactions to this collapsing reality. Some are laughing nervously, others look deeply disturbed. And importantly, it demands uneasy facial expressions and hyper-detailed skin textures.
The specificity of asking an AI for hyper-detailed skin textures is just so gross, but perfect.
It is, and it is actually a very necessary instruction for generative AI.
Why is that?
Because left to their own devices, AI image generators tend to smooth out human features, creating this plasticky, idealized look.
Like an Instagram filter.
Exactly. By forcing the model to render hyper-detailed skin, meaning pores, sweat, blemishes, and micro-wrinkles, the prompt creator is forcing an uncomfortable intimacy.
Oh, I see.
You are visually pushed right into their personal space. You can practically see the cold sweat on their foreheads while they lose their minds.
Which brings us to the centerpiece of the room. The focal point the prompt creates is this one anxious man standing in the center of the circle.
Yes.
He's holding a dusty, heavy CRT television. And this TV is displaying corrupted vintage commercials from the 1990s that are glitching violently between alternate versions of reality.
And the prompt adds a mechanical detail that fundamentally changes the nature of the entire image.
Right.
It instructs faces on the TV briefly stare directly at the camera.
That is the line that really got me. Reading that single instruction instantly elevates the whole concept.
Because it completely changes the psychological dynamic of the scene.
Totally.
The true horror depicted here isn't just holding a mislabeled VHS tape and feeling confused about your childhood. The horror is the active, visceral realization that the fabric of reality is shifting right now.
Yeah.
When the faces on that glitching TV stop acting out a commercial, turn, and make direct eye contact with the viewer, it breaks the containment of the screen.
It's looking at you.
Right. It implies an intelligence, or at least a malicious awareness, behind the collapsing reality. It's not just a glitch. It is looking at you.
It's the difference between investigating a cold case and walking into an active crime scene.
Exactly.
Like, it's one thing to find an old family photo in a shoebox, look at the background, and think, I thought our old couch was blue, not plaid. I must have misremembered.
Right, which is unsettling.
Yeah, that's unsettling. But it is a completely different astronomical level of terror to hold that photograph in your hand and watch your childhood living room physically morph from blue to plaid while you are staring right at it.
Which is exactly what the prompt dictates happens next.
Yeah.
It explicitly states one woman slowly realizes a warped family photograph in her hand is changing in real time.
It's so cruel. It strips away the only comfort you have with the Mandela effect.
Yeah, the plausible deniability.
Right. If the photo changes in your hand, you can no longer blame a bad memory or a faulty brain. The physical evidence itself is unstable. The trauma these characters are experiencing isn't just that reality changed in the past, it's that it is currently rewriting itself right in front of them, and there is absolutely no mechanism to stop it.
And this brings us to a fascinating technical challenge for the AI, honestly.
How to draw it.
Yeah, how do you render an image of a photograph changing in real time within a static image?
Oh, that's tricky.
The prompt is essentially asking the AI to capture a freeze frame of a metamorphosis. The model has to render the woman's hand, the photograph, and a visual state of transition.
So like a blur.
Maybe blurring the edges of the subjects in the photo, or superimposing two different realities on top of one another. It requires the AI to visually represent the very concept of instability.
Man. Well, it's one thing to describe this horrifying scene, but the prompt goes a step further by dictating exactly how we are forced to look at it through a very specific broken lens.
Yes, the aesthetics.
Let's get into those aesthetic instructions, because this is where the text really shows its modern roots. It calls for a 9.16 aspect ratio.
Which is huge.
Yeah, and for anyone who doesn't speak video resolutions, that is a vertical video format. The prompt explicitly calls it a viral YouTube Shorts aesthetic.
And alongside that vertical framing, the prompt gives a set of stylistic instructions that are incredibly deliberate and, frankly, highly contradictory.
Very contradictory.
It demands a photorealistic style with ultra-realistic imagery. But simultaneously, it overlays those demands with instructions for analog distortion, static interference, VHS scan lines, and subtle visual glitches throughout the image.
It's a total paradox. Make it look as real and pristine as a high-end photograph, but also make it look like a degraded, chewed-up videotape from 1994.
Right.
How does an AI even process that?
Well, it creates a fascinating conflict within the model's latent space, which is the mathematical area where it blends concepts.
Okay.
To satisfy both requirements, the generative model doesn't just put a cheap filter over a perfect image. Instead, it has to treat the distortion as part of the physical reality being rendered.
Oh, I see.
The human elements, the sweating skin, the nervous laughter, they are rendered with absolute, undeniable clarity, making them feel immediate.
Real.
Right. But the environment around them, the air itself, is infected with analog distortion and reality glitch effects.
That's amazing.
The medium literally becomes an extension of the message. The world is breaking down, and the image capturing the world is breaking down right along with it.
So what does this all mean? I have a real question about this formatting choice.
Sure.
Why take this profound, reality-breaking existential crisis and specifically frame it in a 9.16 vertical video format? Is the prompt suggesting something about how we consume information?
Oh, definitely.
Like, is the terrifying fundamental collapse of human reality destined to just become another piece of highly consumable vertical content that we mindlessly swipe past on our phones while we're waiting for the bus?
I think that's exactly it. The viral short format is entirely characterized by its fleeting nature. Right?
Yeah, it's fast.
It is engineered to grab your attention for 60 seconds and then be immediately discarded for the next dopamine hit.
Just swipe away.
By trapping this profound existential horror within a 9.16 vertical frame, the prompt forces a juxtaposition. It places the ultimate human terror, the absolute loss of objective reality, right next to the ultimate modern triviality, the infinite algorithmic scroll.
Man, it makes the horror feel both incredibly intimate because we hold our phones so close to our faces and incredibly disposable. Like, oh, wow, the fabric of the universe is collapsing and my childhood memories are a lie. Anyway, swipe up. Here's a video of a guy making a sandwich.
And that dynamic is further complicated by the addition of those VHS scan lines.
The analog stuff.
Layering 1990s magnetic tape degradation onto a modern 2020s vertical video format creates severe chronological dissonance.
It messes with your sense of time.
It merges the technological anxieties of the past with the anxieties of the present. Specifically, our modern fears about algorithmic distortion, deepfakes, and the death of objective truth. The result leaves the viewer completely unmoored in time and space.
Unmoored is the perfect word for this entire experience. The whole prompt is just an exercise in unmooring you.
Absolutely.
It takes a safe, recognizable space like a church basement and unmoors it with sickly green institutional light. It takes childhood nostalgia like the Berenstain Bears and unmoors it by changing the fundamental spelling.
Yeah.
It takes a static, trustworthy family photograph and unmoors it by demanding it change in real time. And then it wraps the whole thing in a format that unmoors you chronologically, blending a YouTube short with a dying VHS tape.
It is a masterclass in layered psychological tension. Every single directive in this prompt, from the macro level of the room's architecture down to the micro level of a floating dust particle and a hyper-detailed skin pore, it's all engineered as a mathematical vector to destabilize the viewer's sense of truth.
Wow. Let's take a step back and recap the journey we've been on with this deep dive, because it's a massive amount of conceptual weight to process.
It really is.
We started by unpacking how an AI prompt acts as a blueprint, walking into the eerie, sickly green light of a typical church basement, expecting a mundane environment of healing.
Finding something else entirely.
Right. Instead, we found a circle of strangers clutching the broken artifacts of our shared pop culture, nostalgic objects that simply don't match the reality we currently live in.
Mm-hmm.
We explored the psychology of the Mandela effect and witnessed the real-time, visceral terror of glitches manifesting physically, from faces trapped in corrupted CRT TVs staring directly back at us, to family photographs morphing in the hands of the people holding them.
Truly terrifying stuff.
And finally, we saw how the prompt wrapped all of this existential dread in a hyper-modern, vertical, viral video aesthetic, heavily layered with the analog static of the past.
And it forces us to confront the fragility of our own perception.
It really does.
We rely entirely on physical evidence to validate our memories. A photograph proves we went to that beach. A book proves we read that story. But if the physical evidence is subject to the same glitches as our minds, where does that leave us?
Which brings me back to that faintly glowing text on the screen in the dark, the ultimate hook of this entire prompt that we started with. What if your memories were never wrong?
Yeah.
I want to leave you with a final thought to really mull over today. If we accept the premise of this terrifying scene, if we accept that human memory is actually perfect and it's our reality that is glitching and quietly updating around us like a bad piece of software, how do you actually navigate a world where physical evidence can just change?
It's a terrifying paradigm shift. You completely lose your anchor to the world.
It really is. Because if the newspapers, the photographs, and the books can literally rewrite themselves in our hands while we are actively looking at them, maybe the only thing we can actually trust anymore is the one thing we are constantly told is flawed.
Our own minds.
Our own minds. Thank you so much for joining us for today's deep dive into the source material. Until next time, maybe take a second look at that old family photo album, just to be sure.
Sure.